Chuck Norris has died at age 86. The legendary action star's family announced his passing on March 20th. Fellow celebrities, including Sylvester Stallone and Priscilla Presley, took to social media with sorrow and condolences for Norris's loss.
Three of the toughest men Hollywood ever produced, Stallone, Van Damme, and Lundgren, broke down in tears. Not on screen, in real life. March 19th, 2026. Chuck Norris was gone, 86 years old.
Family of Chuck Norris saying that the Walker, Texas Ranger star has died at the age of 86.
Hawaii, surrounded by family. The man who spent 6 decades making the world believe nothing could knock him down had been knocked down. But what happened at his final tribute shook everyone differently. The fighters who once stood beside him, the legends who called him a standard, a champ, a brother. They couldn't hold it together. Why did these Iron Men weep? What did Chuck Norris mean to them that the cameras couldn't contain? Stay with us, because what they said will stay with you forever. The morning nobody was ready for nobody expected the call. Not because Chuck Norris seemed immortal in some Hollywood fantasy way, but because 9 days before he died, the man was sparring. March 10th, 2026, his 86th birthday. A video went up on his social media showing him moving through drills in Hawaii, sharp and focused, every strike landing with the same intention it had 50 years ago. He smiled at the camera after and typed the caption himself, "I don't age, I level up." 9 days later, he was gone. On the morning of March 19th, Chuck Norris suffered a medical emergency at his home in Kauai, Hawaii. Sources close to his family confirmed he was hospitalized and that in those first hours, he was alert, calm, joking with the people around him the way he always had quiet humor, no drama, no fuss. By the next morning, the family posted to his Instagram. The statement was short. It did not reach for poetry. It is with heavy hearts that our family shares the sudden passing of our beloved Chuck Norris. He was surrounded by his family and was at peace. To the world, he was a martial artist.
Chuck Norris, a champion martial artist turned Hollywood superstar,
actor, and a symbol of strength. To us, he was a devoted husband, a loving father and grandfather, an incredible brother, and the heart of our family. The heart of our family. Not the legend, not the champion. The heart. That single word said more than any highlight reel ever could. And within hours, the men who had stood beside him, trained beside him, grown up watching him, they started to respond. And none of them were okay. Stallone posted first. No grand speech, no carefully worded statement. Just to photograph the two of them on the set of The Expendables 2, side by side and underneath it. Words that felt like they were pulled straight from somewhere deep. I had a great time working with Chuck. He was all-American in every way. Great man, and my condolences to his wonderful family. All-American in every way. Coming from Stallone, a man who had spent 5 decades building the idea of the American hero on screen, that was not a throwaway phrase. It was a precise verdict from one craftsman to another. Chuck Norris had not merely played a version of America. He had lived one. Then came Van Damme, then Lundgren, then Schwarzenegger, then Priscilla Presley, then Bruce Lee's own family. Ryan, Oklahoma, where it all began. There is a town in southern Oklahoma called Ryan. Population a few hundred. Dirt roads, the kind of silence that settles into a child's bones and never fully leaves. It was there, on March 10th, 1940, and that Carlos Ray Norris came into the world not with fanfare,
born in 1940 in Ryan, Oklahoma, just north of the Texas border,
not with privilege, but with the quiet weight of a family already bending under pressure. His father, Ray Norris, was a World War II veteran who came home carrying wounds no one could see. A mechanic a bus driver, a truck driver, a man who drifted between jobs the way some men drift between bottles. Alcohol was his shadow, and it followed him into every room, every argument, every absence that left his young family stranded. His mother, Wilma, was the opposite. Iron-willed, deeply faithful. The kind of woman who holds everything together with her bare hands while the world around her quietly falls apart. She raised Carlos and his two younger brothers, Wieland and Aaron, with a conviction that bordered on fierce. When the marriage ended, Wilma gathered her sons and moved. First to Kansas, then to Torrance, California, chasing the quiet promise of a fresh start on the West Coast. Carlos was a teenager by then, shy, withdrawn, the kind of boy who disappears into the back of a classroom and is never pulled forward. He did not stand out. He was not the loudest voice, the most confident presence, or the most popular face in any room he entered. By his own admission, years later, he was a boy who felt invisible. What he carried, though, was not weakness. It was patience, discipline that had not yet found its outlet, but was building beneath the surface, quietly waiting. In 1958, at 18, Carlos Ray Norris enlisted in the United States Air Force. It was not a dramatic decision. It was the decision of a young man from a modest background who needed direction and found it in service. He was stationed at Osan Air Base in South Korea, assigned as an air policeman.
Officials from Korea and the United States are conducting a joint on-site inspection of the Osan Air Base.
Korea changed everything. He watched locals training in Tangsu do a Korean martial art with a focus and precision that stopped him cold. He began training with an intensity that surprised even his instructors. Hour after hour, day after day. He gave himself to it completely. His fellow servicemen started calling him Chuck, the nickname that would outlast every film, every championship belt, every television season that followed. 6 years, undefeated. Back in California, Chuck opened a martial arts studio in Torrance. Small space, modest start. A man teaching what he had learned in a country most of his neighbors couldn't find on a map. He competed and lost. Joe Louis handed him early defeats. Alan Steen did the same. Chuck absorbed those losses with the same composure that would later define his screen presence. He did not rage, he did not make excuses. He studied each loss, took it apart piece by piece, and returned to training. By 1967, he had won his first major tournament title, defeating 7 consecutive opponents. From 1968 to 1974, he held the World Professional Middleweight Karate Championship for 6 undefeated years. 6 years, not a single loss. A run so complete it stopped looking like a sports record and started looking like a statement of identity. His studio attracted people who talked. Steve McQueen trained there, Priscilla Presley, the Osmonds, Bob Barker, 2 who wore the bruises of Chuck's training sessions like merit badges for years afterward. These were not celebrity names in a logbook, they were word-of-mouth proof that Chuck Norris was the real thing. Not a performer of martial arts, but a practitioner of it in the deepest possible sense. Then a door opened that no one expected, and behind it stood Bruce Lee. The first time Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee stood in the same room, they recognized something in each other that most people around them couldn't see. Not rivalry, not competition, kinship. 2 men who had given themselves so completely to martial arts that the art had become inseparable from the person. They trained together through the mid-1960s, sparring with an intensity and mutual respect that would define their friendship until Lee died in 1973.
On July 20th, 1973, Bruce Lee died tragically at the age of 32.
In a world full of people who performed martial arts for audiences, these 2 men lived it. In 1972, Bruce Lee brought Chuck onto a film set for the first time. The scene is studied to this day. Two bodies moving with precision and authenticity that no camera trick could manufacture because none was needed. Chuck lost the fight on screen. The film demanded it, but he won something far more valuable off it. And Steve McQueen, sitting in the audience, watching his own karate instructor move through that scene, pulled Chuck aside afterward and told him something that altered the course of both their careers. Hollywood's most authentic action star, he enrolled in acting classes. Same methodical dedication, same daily commitment. In 1977, he landed the lead role in Breaker Breaker, a low-budget action film shot in 11 days. It made money. Well, Hollywood paid attention. Good Guys Wear Black followed in 1978 and became a genuine hit. Then, A Force of One, The Octagon, An Eye for an Eye, and in 1983, Lone Wolf McQuade. The template was firmly set. The lone warrior, the man of few words and devastating action, the figure who didn't need a team, a plan, or a speech, only a cause worth fighting for. Then came Cannon Films, and everything changed scale. Cannon Films, run by producers Menahem Golan and Yoram Globus, had a simple and brilliant understanding of their audience. In the early 1980s, a significant portion of American moviegoers were hungry for stories of American strength and resolve. Vietnam had left wounds. The Iran hostage crisis had bruised the national identity. People were searching for reassurance. A Chuck Norris became that reassurance. Missing in Action arrived in 1984 and struck a nerve so deep it became a cultural phenomenon. Colonel James Braddock, one-man army, prisoner of war, a soldier who refused to leave his men behind. The idea that the right man, with enough conviction, could rewrite an ending history had left unfinished. The sequels followed. Code of Silence in 1985 earned genuine critical respect alongside massive commercial success. The Delta Force in 1986, co-starring Lee Marvin, brought his on-screen persona into counterterrorism with a scope and budget that matched his growing stature.
Trained martial artist, actor, films like Delta Force, Missing in Action.
Between 1984 and 1988, Chuck appeared in 8 films for Cannon. 8 films in 4 years. His movies collectively earned more than $500 million worldwide, placing him not just among the action stars of his era, but among the most commercially reliable performers in Hollywood, regardless of genre. What separated Chuck from the others was something that couldn't be manufactured or coached into him: authenticity. When Chuck Norris fought on screen, audiences knew it was real. Not in the sense that the bullets were live, but in the sense that the man throwing those kicks had actually trained for thousands of hours, had actually competed at the highest levels, had actually stood across from the greatest martial artists of his generation, and held his ground. Arnold had spectacle. Willis had wit. Siegel had technique. Chuck had credibility. The quiet, serious, deeply earned credibility of a man who had built everything he had on the mat before he ever stepped in front of a camera. And that foundation made it unshakable. Walker. To kickstart kids and the faith. Behind it all, by the early 1990s, the Cannon Films era was over. The studio had collapsed. The landscape of Hollywood action cinema had shifted beneath the feet of the men who had defined it. Chuck Norris went to Texas, not to retire, to build something different. Walker, Texas Ranger, premiered on CBS in 1993. 8 seasons.
He's, of course, beloved for his role on Walker, Texas Ranger.
200 episodes. For the tens of millions of viewers who made it a weekly Saturday night ritual, the show offered something far simpler and, for its audience, far more valuable than the moral complexity critics preferred. It offered clarity. Good and evil were distinguishable. Justice was achievable. And the man pursuing it was someone you could believe in without reservation. Judson Mills, who played his partner Francis Gage on the series for years, had described what it was actually like to stand beside Chuck when the cameras stopped rolling. Chuck was one of those rare individuals who was truly the icon he was made out to be. Quiet, humble, kind, wise, and gentle. A giant among men who somehow always made you feel completely at ease, like he was just one of the gang. A giant who made you feel at ease. That combination of extraordinary stature, ordinary warmth, is one of the rarest things a person can be. But the work Chuck was most proud of during those years had nothing to do with television ratings. In 1990, he founded Kickstart Kids, a nonprofit dedicated to bringing martial arts training into middle schools and high schools across Texas, targeting at-risk youth in communities where direction was scarce and danger was close. The philosophy behind it was the same one that had changed his own life in South Korea decades earlier. Discipline is not a punishment, it is a gift. Give a young person a practice that demands their full attention, their full effort, their full commitment, and you give them the internal architecture to build a life worth living. By the time of his death, Kickstart Kids had reached tens of thousands of children across the state of Texas. No cameras, no promotional campaigns, just Chuck Norris doing what he believed in, the same way he had always done everything quietly, consistently, and with the full weight of his conviction. His faith ran through all of it. Chuck was a committed Christian, and he spoke about it without embarrassment or performance. It was not a brand. It was not a political costume. And it was the foundation of how he understood his own life, the poverty he had been born into, the discipline he had found, the success he had been given, and the responsibility that came with all of it. In 2005, the internet found him. A series of jokes began circulating under the title of Chuck Norris Facts. Hyperbolically exaggerated claims about his toughness, delivered deadpan, escalating into pure absurdity. Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups. He pushes the earth down. Death once had a near Chuck Norris experience. The final chapter. In 2012, Sylvester Stallone called with an invitation that read less like a film offer and more like a reunion. The Expendables 2 was assembling the most concentrated collection of action cinema legends ever placed on a single screen. Stallone understood something the industry sometimes forgets. Certain figures don't diminish with absence. They accumulate gravity. Chuck arrived on set, and the dynamic shifted immediately. Cast members who had grown up watching him described the sensation of standing beside him as unexpectedly affecting, not because he demanded reverence, but because he radiated the kind of settled authority that no amount of box office success can manufacture. His scene became one of the film's most celebrated moments, walking in alone, calm, dispatching enemies with quiet efficiency, delivering a line that winked at his own legend, and the audience roared. For one luminous moment, every decade of his career collapsed into a single scene of pure, joyful recognition. He returned to Texas afterward, to the life that mattered most. His wife, Gina O'Kelly, whom he married in 1998, had become, by every account of those close to him, the true center of his world. He stopped everything else and showed up completely. Near zero public appearances. The full force of his attention redirected toward her recovery. The man who had spent a career portraying indestructible heroes demonstrated in those years what genuine strength actually looks like. Not in front of cameras, not on a movie set, in hospital corridors, in quiet rooms, in the unglamorous and irreplaceable act of simply staying. Then the losses arrived in a different form. In 2024, His mother, Wilma, passed away at the age of 103. She was the woman who had held everything together through poverty, divorce, and relocation. The iron-willed, deeply faithful presence who had given Chuck the resilience he carried his entire life. She was, in the deepest sense, the first person who had ever believed in him. In December 2025, Diane Holacek, Chuck's first wife, his high school sweetheart from Torrance, the mother of his sons Mike and Eric, passed away after a long battle with dementia. She was 84. Her passing closed a chapter that reached all the way back to the boy from Oklahoma, who had not yet found his direction. On March 10, 2026, his 86th birthday, Chuck Norris was sparring in Hawaii, moving clean, smiling at the camera, typing a caption with the timing of a man who had been perfecting the joke for decades. Carlos Ray Norris, born March 10, 1940, Ryan, Oklahoma, died March 19, 2026, Kauai, Hawaii. Survived by his wife Gina, his sons Mike, Eric, and Dakota, his daughters Danilee and Dina, and a world measurably quieter for his absence. The memes said Chuck Norris doesn't die. He just decides to stop showing up. For once, the joke and the truth are the same. He showed up every single day on the mat, on the screen, in the community, in the family, in the faith. He showed up with discipline, humility, and a quiet strength that no camera ever fully captured. If this man's life moved you, his story, his character, his legacy, leave a like in his honor. Subscribe so you never miss another story like this. And share it with someone who still believes one determined person can change the world. Because Chuck Norris proved they can.